first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fox 12 Now. That is a live shot up there on Ski Bowl. As you can see, that's a lot different than it was last week if you were watching this show. There is snow coming down. There's a lot of talk about that. We'll be covering that later today on the show, but that's for a little bit of a later segment. So thanks for joining us. We are live streaming, of course, on Fox 12 Oregon's YouTube channel, Facebook channel, our apps, and our website. So lots of places to find us. Appreciate you being here for all the different conversations that we get to have. But right now, we are going to be talking about something that's starting up here later this week, and that is the Studio Ghibli Festival that is taking place at OMSI. This is, I believe, over a month long, and it's a fantastic celebration of the Japanese studio, some of the animated films that they have. And we're going to discuss all of that with an expert right now who's joining us, and that is Professor Patrick Terry, who is from Portland State. And thank you very much for being here with us today. Really, really appreciate it. I think, to start off, this is something that I have to admit I was unfamiliar with. The correct pronunciation. Let's just start with that, if we can.
So the basic pronunciation is Studio Ghibli, or Ghibli Studios, and it's a word that is for the studio filmmakers. They say it's almost a nonsense word, but it comes from an Arabic term for a hot desert wind. And the studio filmmakers, Miyazaki Hayao, are absolutely in love with aviation, and so things related to wind, the nature, earth, all kind of led into it. But he always likes to kind of be humble and say the name almost came from nowhere. It could have been anything, but it's now Studio Ghibli.
And now just associated with them. I mean, I love the backstory, though, of it. That's a pretty great, actually. You may not think that it's just kind of a nonsense word, but that's a pretty good association, actually. So,
right.
So going from there, let's, for anybody who's watching who doesn't know, and I'm sure there's a lot of huge fans that are watching that already do know, but bear with us. If you could maybe explain the studio just a little bit and what it is that they do so amazing for all these years.
Sure. I mean, it's definitely difficult in a short conversation to kind of encompass why internationally this is such a well-known, loved studio. But at the very basic level, they tell stories that, while they're specific in their content, connect to an emotional sort of resonance that goes around to basically anyone in the world. And that's sort of something where you can enjoy it first time watching it. Almost any age can grab onto any one of the films and love them. But the more that you watch it, more layers are revealed. As you grow with the films, you discover different things that you connect with. So you can watch some of these pictures like a Spirited Away or even a Kiki's Delivery Service. And when you're 9, 10, 12, enjoy it on one level. And when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s and on, enjoy it for entirely different levels. So I think that classic element is why we often hear the connotation in the United States that Studio Ghibli is the Disney of Japan. But it's a very, very different type of studio. Disney we think of as really this international brand. It has all kinds of different conglomerate hubs where we have now Star Wars, National Geographic, Marvel, all connected with Disney. Studio Ghibli is still a very small studio. And there's a little bit of myth making that the 3, 4 founders are still really the main heads of the company. So you have at the beginning Miyazaki Hayao, who directed, many wonderful films, but Spirited Away, most recently The Boy and the Heron, that just won Best Picture at the Golden Globes last night, the first time that a Ghibli animated film had won a Best Animation Golden Globe. So it's a studio that, as much as it's known internationally, is built around the myth of these individuals. And in the case of the festival that OMSI is putting on, they're showcasing every one of the films. So it's an opportunity for people to be able to really take these films in, be able to experience them on the Imperial screen, pretty much the largest screen in the Portland metro area, if not almost a good majority of the West Coast. So you can really see these films in a way that streaming, DVD, even a different type of theatrical situation doesn't really let you fully jump into the film. So that's, again, kind of getting us from the specificity of the studio to why you would want to keep watching these films again and again.
I mean, there's so many different things that you just said there that, unique is the word that really sticks out to me, because one, that, as you mentioned, they may be Disney or Japan's Disney studios, but still it's really the founders there driving it. It's still small. It's not this huge conglomerate that would be. And then also the fact that, over, I believe it's 30 years, I think, correct me if I'm wrong on that, 30 some years that the studio's been around.
So
that
it's actually 40. They're
40,
celebrating their
40.
40th anniversary this coming March, and that's also like, you know, thinking about, is it 30, is it 40, is actually kind of built in again to the myth of the studio, because they have a picture that was released in March of 1984 called Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind. It's the debut screening that OMSI is going to be putting on this Friday to celebrate the 40th anniversary of that film's release. But Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind was not made when Studio Ghibli was founded. The company was founded in 1985, but all of the creative personnel that we associate with Ghibli got their start with Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. So it was the producer, Tokuma Yasuyoshi, the kind of, he was a genius behind a lot of different innovative practices in the business world, wanted to keep these creative people together. Miyazaki Hayao, Takahata Isao, and Suzuki Toshio, who again are kind of the three musketeers of Studio Ghibli. They have been able to kind of, again, build the myth of the company. They were really the focus behind getting this feature of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. So we oftentimes see on the Ghibli Studio webpage that this is included as one of their films, but this is where big fans can quibble as to when Ghibli starts. So even in the origin of the company, there can be a lot of debate about, you know, where this company begins and ends.
I love that. There's still all this mystery, even for people who are, you know, fans for the entire run.
Mm.
So I want to ask some more questions about that, but I think just really quick to take a step aside from that, can you talk about yourself and your association, you know, with the festival, with the studio, and everything that goes on there?
Certainly. For the last several years, I've been fortunate to give some featured talks and introduce some of the films. Last year, for instance, they did a 10th anniversary screening of The Wind Rises, which was up until this last year, Miyazaki Hayao's most recent film that looked specifically at an aeronautics engineer who designed the Zero warplane during World War II, but it's also encompassing a whole lot of other issues and ideas. But beyond that, the OMSI Festival is showcasing not only the films, but providing these opportunities for people like myself and my colleagues like Dr. Robert Rivera to give sort of contextualized talks to help give a guided viewing of the film. Now, it's not to say that you have to watch it exactly the way we're telling you, but it's for people that maybe have lower information or who are interested in Ghibli but would like to hear a bit more about either the production, the themes, the content. OMSI gives a space for general lifelong learners to be able to have a little bit something on top of just being able to go to the screening. And so it's been a real gift to go beyond the classroom to be able to connect more with our metro area and, you know, really share the love of the studio with a wider audience than might come to our classrooms.
And I think you hit on something right there, you know, being able to continue your education and learn something while you're going there as well. Not only see the film on a gigantic, you know, screen, but also to get a little bit more of the context on it. And I think to that extent, you know, for somebody out there who maybe hasn't seen very many, has only heard of a couple of these films, what do you think they should know or expect going into watching one of these?
Well, I mean, I think the main thing with a Ghibli film is to not over intellectualize it if you are first watching it. You need an open heart. You need to connect with it on an emotional level, and then based on that experience, start thinking about what is standing out to me. Is it the color? Is it the movement of the characters? Is it the elements of the story? Those are the layers then that when you're driving home with your friends and loved ones and trying to talk about the film, or you're thinking about maybe getting a book or maybe purchasing a Blu-ray or DVD for yourself or watching it on a streaming service, that then you can go into kind of a deeper level. But some of the more broad elements are, you know, a connection with nature, the specificity of Japan's history. So again, even though it's a specific story that takes you to a world, the emotion of the characters drives you through. So even if you feel like you might get lost on a very specific cultural point, there's enough other elements that will keep you engaged, that will make sure that you don't actually feel lost, and actually will be a joy to then learn a little bit more. So you feel like you could share with your friends something you learned about this film or this world, if there's any kind of barrier at all for you.
What do you think is so important that a festival like this, because it's ninth year, correct? Actually, let me just specify that. So Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So this has been going on, I think, as long as G Kids has been the distributor in North America of Studio Ghibli's films. Previously, it was Walt Disney Studios, but since G Kids has taken over, there have been even further pushes for these types of festivals because year after year, audiences continue to return and new audiences sort of grow with these films. So the festival has actually maintained a high level of success. Every time I have given a talk, it's been to a very full audience. There's people there that have maybe seen the films 10 plus times, but are still just as excited, just as interested in watching the film.
What do you think it is about about Japanese animation and studios just in general? I feel like over the last, not that I mean they've always been popular, but especially over the last several years, it seems like it's really kind of exploded in popularity and growth into maybe people who didn't used to watch it before. What do you think that is about that is, really driven that popularity?
I mean, there's a lot of different factors, and that's always the difficulty of thinking about the sort of arc of history, because in the post-war period, we had things like Astro Boy running on television in the United States that were dubbed into English. So as much as there are going to continue to be increased interest, I think every generation has a type of animation they would connect to, specifically from Japan. There has been a long-standing relationship between different animation studios like Toei Animation and now on into Studio Ghibli and others, that they do have a distribution into the United States. And there is always an interest, I think, in compelling stories, vivid characters, and strong action. Ghibli sets itself apart in that it still does a great deal of hand-drawn animation. They only really have a handful, very small, minute use of computer-generated imagery. I think in the very early days of CGI, we had a few sequences in Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away, but they've largely contained kind of a traditional animation style. And I think that that is, again, where we connected to old ideas of Disney Studios, where we think of the sort of classics of the 1950s with Peter Pan and Cinderella, but then even the revival films of the 1980s, early 90s of Little Mermaid and Lion King. When you're watching Studio Ghibli films, there is a lush color palette where a lot of Japanese anime is oftentimes distinctly different than what we think of these types of full animation, where there will a lot of times be in a kind of a crude sense, the way Hanna-Barbera used to do their cartoons, where backgrounds were stationary and you would have minimal movement of a character kind of in the foreground. So that would be a reduction of labor costs. You could reuse the cells. It was a cost cutting, but also an efficiency measure. But that also created its own aesthetic style that a lot of people grab onto and enjoy and love. And there's many television series, many feature films that function more in that way. So you have, again, a range of different types of films and television series that people really grab onto characters, and particularly for long-running TV shows, they can stay with these characters for decades. There's hundreds of episodes that you can watch. But something about Studio Ghibli, where you only get a film every handful of years, every time that a film comes out, they make kind of an announcement that they're shutting the studio down, which is not to say that they're actually firing everyone, but as a measure of saying that we keep our company very, very small. It's not about growth and making as many films and as many products as we can every year, which seems strange considering how popular Studio Ghibli is. But again, that goes back to the idea that it's this very small group. We can focus on very specific individuals as the creative artists, but every time they have to make a film, there is a bit of annoyance or head scratching of, we've got to get the team back together again. We've got to get new animators. We have to see if other animators that have gone on to other projects can join us here. And The Boy and the Heron is a good example of that, because many animators who have had their own successful careers are really strong in the business because of their love of not only Ghibli, but specifically the relationship they have with Miyazaki Hayao and Suzuki Toshio, the producer. They will come back to Ghibli to work with them, even though they have a very full plate themselves. So again, it speaks to the specificity of Ghibli, but also how it fits into the larger sort of eclectic world of anime writ large.
I mean, that is pretty amazing. I mean, because you look at the commercial aspect of so many big films, it's like, okay, success here. Well, let's keep pumping these out. Let's bring all this in, make more money. And it just sounds like they're really, the artistic side of it is really one of the more important things in telling the stories that they're telling. And to that extent, I guess let's discuss, just the film festival itself, because I want people to know exactly what they're getting into. You mentioned it starts off, with the first one. Can you talk about just the progression of this festival and what it is that people can expect?
So it's what's really nice is that it's not in any kind of chronological order. They're using the opening night to give you really a VIP experience. Like I think that ticket is a little bit more expensive, but you get concessions. You get, I think, a ticket to attend OMSI on a later date, and it's really meant to kind of bring the pomp and circumstance to that first event. The rest of the series, from January 12th to February 25th, you can find tickets at omsi.edu. You can basically select either a subtitled or dubbed screening of nearly every film in the catalog, but they're not, again, going in any kind of chronological order. So you can really look over the whole schedule and see what screening best fits what you would like to see. But that also then gives you an opportunity to, just sort of take in the whole world of the film, so that, again, there won't be talks before every screening because they're running 2 or 3 films every day. So it's sort of a nice opportunity that, again, you could go to something that has a bit more to it, where there's a directed talk beforehand, but you also could just go and enjoy it like you would any other sort of matinee screening. But this is an opportunity to, again, see films in a way that, watching it on Max, watching it on your Blu-ray, even if you have a very nice setup at home, you just don't quite, particularly if you've never been to the Imperial Screen, you've just never quite experienced these films in quite the same way.
Yeah, I mean, and I love the fact that it's a festival that's lasting for this long, but also you can a la carte, exactly what you want to experience, or just pick something and go attend it in different ways and facets of that. Well, it's really great to have you on here too to talk about this. I appreciate your time in discussing this, and as you mentioned, even though this is like 15 minutes we've been talking, there's so much more that we could cover in it. But
Absolutely.
that's why people can go check out the festival and find out more about it, and absolutely go there. And if you're already a fan, of course, they're already going to be doing that anyway. Any final thing that you want to let people know about?
Just that, if you have an opportunity, please, not only go with yourself, take a friend, take a loved one, because the conversation you have on the way home after watching a Ghibli film, I think, is one of the treats. Going home with my child after watching Spirited Away, or more recently, The Boy and the Heron, gives that extra bit of joy beyond just what the screening provides itself. So thank you very much for letting me share about this studio and the opportunity of the festival.
It's really interesting, and thanks for being here with us. I appreciate it so much. And yeah, Patrick, thanks for joining us here on Fox 12 Now to talk about this.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll continue on. So, Patrick, have a great day. And just for everybody who's watching live, this is part of what we get to do here with Fox 12 Now. I always say this in case if this is your first time watching. We cover a wide range of topics. Some of them are really interesting events like that. Sometimes it's breaking news. Coming up at 1:30, we're going to be talking to the National Weather Service about the blizzard warnings that are coming into the Cascades, into the Gorge. This is the first time in a while for the Cascades blizzard warning since 2012, I believe. So we're going to discuss what goes into that, what to expect with this, maybe some safety tips for people who are living in that area, because this is a pretty major weather system, as obviously we've been covering on everything else as well. So we're going to get a little more into the details of how that gets predicted and what goes on there. So that's coming up at 1:30 p.m. If you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, you'll see this video end. We'll be back at 1:30. You'll see an alert that says, hey, Fox 12 Now is live. If you're watching on the apps or the website, we'll continue on. We've got a little bit more that we provide over there. So that's a good opportunity right now to download the Fox 12 Oregon app and join me over there. I'm signing off right now. I'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.